I'm Sujhey Beisser, and I am a home cook. I own a personal chef business called Five Senses Palette. I also work at Park Bank, and this is The Layered Onion. I had been reading The Shallot because I've been connected with Noah through REAP Food Group. And he had mentioned, he had been working with a food collective. So when he had mentioned that this would be a project that I would probably do good for, because I've shared some of my recipes with Reap, and I have done some cooking classes for them, for some students with some of their programs. And so he thought, it might be a good idea that I apply. So I did. Arepas is, for Venezuelans, it's like the bread of Venezuelans. We eat arepas pretty much every day. I grew up eating arepas every day for breakfast. It's kind of a breakfast meal, but at the same time, you can eat it any time of the day, really. It's very filling. The way that I feel, it's like at home we only ate arepas with like cheese and butter, because that was like the easiest thing, and that was our breakfast every day, arepas with cheese and butter. But if you go out, there are these places in Venezuela called areperia, which their specialty is to serve arepas, and there is different kinds of fillings for the arepas, and each filling has a different name. And so those are the ones that you usually see, posted in pictures and whatnot. They're like huge. So arepas is like comfort food. It's made out of corn flour and water. Pretty much, you would. I teach an arepa cooking class, and I always say it's, first of all, it's an indigenous food, which we should be proud of, and second of all, it's like every culture in Latin America has some sort of version of it. Even though there is some sort of controversy between Venezuela and Colombia, which one owns the arepa, it's like a nonsense to me, because arepas were around before we were colonized and before the countries were even a country. So when the land was of the indigenous people, arepas were already being made as a sort of bread. And so I feel like every one of our Latin cultures have some sort of bread that looks like arepa. If Mexicans have a gordita that I would consider like an arepa, and then El Salvador has pupusas, which is, they're always made kind of the same way with the same concept. They're just treated differently by their each culture. So it's something that means a lot if you are from Venezuela. So there is a difference between the flour that we use for arepas and the flour that is used, for example, for tortillas, because that corn has a process that's called nixtamalization, and that doesn't happen to the corn that they use to make this kind of flour for arepas. But you can certainly find it here, the flour that we use. Before, the flour was only invented, I believe, in like the 60s. Before that, it was just like actually grinding the corn, like, I guess the industry made it easier for my grandmother, but my great grandmother, she probably had to actually be grinding the corn and then, just making the arepas. And there are places still in Venezuela that do that. They call it like arepas de maíz pilao, which is like, if they didn't use the flour, they literally just use the corn to make the arepas. So my recipe, the arepa recipe, is just a very general arepa recipe, but because we are in Wisconsin and because I like to utilize like local products, then I use, like, this was in the summer, I use like local tomatoes and I use local goat cheese, and I kind of made, something different. It wouldn't be something that you would find if you go to a Venezuelan arepera, for sure, but it's something that I would definitely make at home to make, like a mix of my Venezuelan culture and my Wisconsin. I've been here for 25 years, so I feel like I'm also from Wisconsin now. So yeah, it's kind of a mixture of the the two cultures. Creativity part for sure. There was a time I have been at Part Bank for 23 years and I was a manager for 8 years. And that was busy work. I work mostly Monday through Saturday because I worked at a branch. But there was nothing creative about it. You know, I was managing people, managing money, managing accounts, managing clients, banking issues and solving them. But there is really nothing creative there. It's just like you go by the book, and in fact, there is a lot of rules in banking, and you kind of got to know them all, and there's a lot of training. And I really enjoyed the most my interactions with clients, solving their issues, and kind of helping develop my staff. Like that was what I enjoyed the most because I feel like developing my staff, I could be a little bit creative. But then cooking has been a part of my life forever. Like I don't remember a time when I was not cooking. Since I was little, I would be sitting in the kitchen with my grandma, watching her cook, or my mom, and we never eat out when I was growing up. So we always cooked at home. So for me, it was like people were always, every time there was a potluck at work, I would bring something that I made at home. People wanted the recipe, and then I'll be like thinking, I didn't write the recipe. I wish there was a time when recipes were written like by my grandma. Like I wish I could have access to some of the things she used to make. And then that got me thinking. Also, this was kind of like early to 2010s when the blogs were like a thing, and there was Pinterest and Instagram was kind of starting. And I thought, maybe I can start sharing my recipes in a blog. And then when people ask me for a recipe, I can just give them my blog and then they can go get it there. And I started doing that. And that, just because I am a little bit of a perfectionist, I thought, I started doing my blog and the pictures were horrible. Like, I don't want to eat that. I know it tastes really good, but it doesn't look good. So then I decided I needed to take some food photography classes. And I did that online. And then I started cooking for the picture too. So it was two things. It was making my recipe, writing it down step by step, and making sure that each step actually was placed in the right spot. And then, making sure that the final product looked good for a picture. So then I was always thinking of colors, or what am I going to garnish this with? Or, what am I going to put next to it? And it was really fun to learn that part of like food photography. But my food was also real. I was cooking for my family. And I wasn't like, putting something underneath to make it look taller or anything. So like I had to use my creativity to be like, this is the food that I was serving my family, but I was also making it look pretty to post it on the blog. So I feel like that was my outlet to use my creativity, because at work, I didn't really need it. At work, it was more like by the book. And then with my blog and on the weekends when I was doing my cooking, I was using my creativity that way. It's hard to think about it in a way, because I grew up eating always food that was grown locally. And I grew up with a big backyard that we had food that grew there. Not necessarily what we ate every day, but we had fruit trees. And, if we needed a lemon, we just went outside and grabbed one. And if we needed onoto to dye the food, we use that a lot in our food to make it like orangey or yellow. We just grabbed it from the tree. We had tomatoes and we had avocado. Avocado was something that we almost never bought, outside, because we had a tree. Just little things like that. So for me, it wasn't like I had to think about it. It was really hard for me when I first moved here that I had to think about. Well, at first, I was like really amazed that there was like food in boxes, the microwave food that it's already made. And I was like, oh, it's already made. You can put it in this box and it's now like you can eat it. And I was like super amazed. about that until I kind of started understanding like this doesn't taste right and it's really not even that good. And after I ate it, my stomach didn't feel good. Um, but it was just like hard for me to start thinking about, oh, to buy fresh stuff, I actually have to go to the farmer's market here. Because if I go to the store, this stuff comes from Canada or California or Mexico. Like it's traveling a lot. And I never really had to think about my food traveling that much, at least not like the fresh stuff. And so it was like for me it was first of all like shocking, and then I had to get used to it, and I had to like go to the farmers market every Saturday if I wanted to get like the fresh stuff. And then I discovered the when you buy from the farm, the CSA. And then I started doing that. I did it with few different farms. The last farm that I did my CSA was Vitruvian Farms, and I was happy because I was just getting like whatever was in season. And that actually also helped my creativity because I'm like, what am I getting in the box? Okay, what am I cooking with this? Yeah, it was really weird to start thinking about food that way when I never had to think about food that way. For me, like every time I think about cooking at home was like cooking with my grandma, cooking with my mom, with my aunts. Like no one is ever cooking by themselves in the kitchen, right? Like there's always people around, whether coming in and out or just sitting at the table chatting. I really miss that here because I felt like I didn't have that. And I think with the cooking classes and being connected with the Latino community, I felt more like, oh, okay, that this way it's like we're all around the table, we're all eating this food. Also, with my personal chef business, I kind of try to create that where I had a story for every dish that I was serving, whether it was my recipe. Sometimes it wasn't my recipe, it was a recipe from a book. But I may have a story of why I chose that recipe from that book or why I admire the chef that created the recipe and so on. Um, to me, it's just like food is what brings people together. And you can learn so much about a culture by learning their food. Like I love taking cooking classes of other cultures, even Latin American cultures or Indian food. I took some cooking classes at the Madison College, and you realize the similarities, right? Like with Indian food, it's like, wow, they use a lot of the same spices we use and a lot more that I had never used. So I learned how to use those. And then sometimes I'm like cooking my own Latin food, but like putting some Indian spices that I never did before. Um, and I think that's the only way that people can really get to know your culture is by eating your food. And every time that you eat something that is made with the heart and that people have a connection with the dish, there is a story, like, oh, I remember I used to eat this when my grandma made it, or I remember we used to eat this every afternoon when we came back from school, or the smells usually remind me of, I mean, a smell can take me back, to either a place or at home or just walking down the street from school, getting home after school. And every household had like a different smell coming out of, their windows. So I feel like it's so important to be connected with people when it comes to food, because without people, we wouldn't have, the food culture that we have. When they were younger, it was easier. They were very excited to be in the kitchen with me, and they would be, wanting to do some cutting and some cooking. I have to say, both of my kids do know how to cook and they like it. But when they became a certain age, like around 10, 12, they wanted nothing to do with me in the kitchen. They had their own things to do, and they would come and eat all my food, of course, but they kind of lost that interest of being in the kitchen with me, and I kind of respected that. That's not what they wanted to do. They're growing up differently than I did, and it was just me in the kitchen too. It's not like when I remember being a kid, it was everyone was in the kitchen. It was my grandma, it was my mom, it was my aunt, it was my uncle. All the cousins were running around. And I just chose to be sitting there listening and watching my grandma cook. But my kids grew up differently. The only person, they could see either me or they could see their dad cooking, but it wasn't that same culture around the cooking table that they had. So I respected that they didn't want to do that, but I'm proud that they both know how to cook. And actually, my son, when he cooks something at home, obviously he's 19 now, but when he cooks something, he sends me a picture of what he made, and I feel proud that he has that. Also, that they can eat anything. They are not picky with food, and they love seafood. They love any kinds of vegetables. And I feel like that's because I always cooked anything at home. I wasn't like, we don't eat this or we don't eat that, or I don't like the taste of this. It was always like, how do I incorporate this new vegetable that I didn't know? Like, I'm trying to think of a Wisconsin vegetable kohlrabi. I had never tried kohlrabi before. Or the beautiful colorful cauliflowers. Like, how do I incorporate that into the meal? And they just ate it. So I don't think they're super creative, but they can grab a recipe and they can cook it. So that's good for me. I think it's just by just doing it at home, um, bringing the family together, especially right now during the holidays. Like in Venezuela, it's such a big thing to make hallacas, we call it. It's the Venezuelan version of tamales. It's made again with the corn flour and it's filled with different sorts of meats, pork, chicken, lots of different vegetables, and it's all wrapped in a banana leaf. And it's a whole ordeal. That's one thing that I always did with my kids every holiday season. It's like I grab a weekend that was the weekend for ayacas, and even if they didn't want to, they had to help because they had no choice. Um, I think that trying to do that more and trying to bring the kids at a young age to be involved in cooking and doing that, I think that that's kind of the way to do it. I like when they do it at schools. For example, I teach almost every summer. I teach one of the programs at Rooted, how to make arepas, and the kids just have so much fun. They just want to put their hands in there, and there's sometimes Latino kids, and I can teach in Spanish, and sometimes it's a mix, so I have to teach both in Spanish and English. And some kids already know what an arepa is, and some kids have never seen it before. To me, just the best part is like when it's all done, they all want to eat. A lot of times we run out of food because it's like, oops, I mean, we didn't make as much as I thought the kids would want to eat. But that is one that I really enjoy too, because Rooted has their own garden. And so what they do is like we go out and the kids grab the ingredients from the garden. So whatever they have, it's usually zucchini, peppers, garlic, basil. And then I just cook, like a little, we call it sofrito, right? And I just cook all the vegetables, and that's what we fill the arepas with. Again, it's not a traditional arepa. The arepa is always going to be just a general recipe, but whatever I'm putting inside of the arepa, it's a little bit of local Wisconsin in there. So I enjoy doing that for Rooted every year. They invite me, and sometimes I also do just a video because they post it on their Facebook page or on their website during Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's just teaching a recipe. I feel like that's the way that I can help bring people into the culture and wanting to cook, but people at home just have to keep trying. And I know life is busy and all, but there's nothing like a homemade meal. If you try the difference between either buying something canned or something fresh, and especially something locally grown, it's like there is no comparison. That's why I always also choose the restaurants that I go to that way, because it's like I know the quality of the ingredients matters in the taste of the food too. Of course, the chef skills is gonna matter too, but just the quality of the food and how it feels in your body is different. But you have to experience it yourself in order to know that that's how it works. I don't know how to convince people, other than maybe just letting them try sometimes and explaining, like this. They're like, oh my God, why this tastes so good? I've never tasted a radish this good. It's like, well, because the ones you buy at the store, they taste like water. But the ones that are locally grown, they taste like this peppery, spicy flavor. So I don't know how to convince you other than you have to try it and see how it feels and how it tastes differently. Sometimes I feel like we try really hard reinventing the wheel. I think there is a lot of organizations already that have the access to create programs, to teach kids, to bring families together. I know that, like I said, Rooted does it, Centro Hispano does it, Badger Rock. Like they have these meals on Fridays and bring people together to eat. It's like there is a lot already out there. But for me, if I could do it and that it's all that I did, although it's very hard work to be on your feet cooking all day, I think that it would be some sort of program where I could bring Latin kids to enjoy cooking their own food or the food that comes from their heritage or their culture, and have fun while they're doing it. I mean, I imagine like a very beautiful kitchen doing that. But yeah, I think there are ways and there are resources. It's just like sometimes it's really hard to access those resources and to create those programs and to invest the time in our community to do that. But I think, I think there is ways to do it. I think rice, because it's so versatile. Like I can cook it in so many different ways. Although I almost always end up cooking it the same way, but it's like I can make a risotto, or I can make arroz con pollo, or I just this week submitted a recipe for the capital city Hughes, arroz con pepitonas, which is it's like a clam, but they grow in the coast of Venezuela, and it's usually by canned. And I went to a Latin store and I found it, and I was like, "Ooh, I gotta make this." You can make it plain white. You can make. I also recently made at home Mexican rice, which I guess I never knew it had tomatoes in it. I always thought it was just like food coloring that made it red, but I learned it had tomatoes in it, so I made it at home and it turned out good. And then there is all the different kinds of like Indian rices that I love, like coconut rice or cumin rice, and so many different ways you can cook rice, and every time it tastes different and you can pair it with so many other different ingredients. I'm Sujhey Beisser and I am a home cook. I have a personal chef business called 5 Senses Palette, and this was The Layered Onion.